So in order to do that, it's worth for me just dipping into briefly into attachment theory, about our early relationships. It took me a long time to realise that that I have to a certain extent attachment disorder because of what happened to me as a child, that I have attachment issues. And it's not that I was young, I was so young, I was 7 months when my mom died, so there's no physical, there's no memory of what happened, but in the cells of my body there is a memory of what happened. And so there are issues around essentially attachment, but it plays up very much so in my relationships with women. There's this thing of she's going to leave me, or this isn't going to work out, and insecurity and control and all that sort of stuff is still there to a certain extent. So what I did, what that showed me, what that evidence for me is that our relationships are so massively important. And in order to be empowered, we need a good relationship with ourselves, and we need a good relationship with the other people around us. How do we form secure attachments with other people? I'm not sure, not everybody was in Mike's session, but I found, he mentioned the experiment that was done with rats, where because everybody wasn't here, I'll just mention it briefly, that they put one rat in its own on a cage and gave it 2 bottles of water. One was laced with cocaine, the other one was laced with just water. And the rat on its own would always go to the cocaine-laced water until it killed itself. Now they repeated the experiment with 2 bottles, one cocaine-laced, one normal, but they put it in a rat park, a rat heaven, where there are all sorts of toys and beautiful layout and wonderful things for the rats to do. And there were lots of friends. There were lots of other rats in there. And so what happened was that none of the rats got addicted to the cocaine-laced water. They just went for the normal water and occasionally had a bit of the other stuff. So, we know from all sorts of different research and experiments that our relationships with other people is fundamental. It's fundamental to our happiness. So that became more and more important for me when I began thinking, well, how do I create the right conditions, the optimum conditions to empower young people? Why is it that they respond well to me, but they don't respond so well to another lecturer at the college or another person? What's going on there? So if I just read the second one, the levels of key chemicals and serotonin and cortisol that promote social and emotional development, mood regulation and self-control are released through interaction with early caregivers. This means that pathways in the brain are either formed or not formed. So we can kind of think, okay, so if a lot of the severely disadvantaged young people usually have a story that something has gone wrong in their safe family environment. But what I'm increasingly finding is that there really is no such thing as a functional family unit. It's all dysfunctional to a certain degree. And I base that on my belief that we're living in a dysfunctional society. That the way that the society is constructed these days is no longer creating the optimum health. It's not just for a select few, it's for pretty much everybody, but it's just on a spectrum. When I was working with those 8 young people on the Voices of the Future project, at one of the coaching sessions, group coaching sessions, I said, just raise your hand if you suffer any sort of anxiety or depression or anything like that. Just thinking that a few might put their hands up, but they all raised their hands. It was 100%. And they all had very different stories, some from very, normal, for want of a better word, middle class families with both parents and so on. So, it's not just a select few anymore, and there are all sorts of stuff which we haven't got time to go into of why that might be, that our early needs for secure attachment are no longer being met. So, attachment theory talks about these 10 different needs The need for attention, acceptance, appreciation, encouragement, affection, respect, support, comfort, approval, and security. I'm very happy to pass you, a copy of the presentation to circulate if people want to. I can see some people scribbling, but I also know that scribbling helps people remember what's going on anyway. So these are the key emotional needs that attachment theory talks about, and that, if we have those needs met when we're young, then we're more likely to have a solid foundation to our lives. If we don't have those needs met, then we go through our lives in dysfunctional and unconscious ways, often trying to get those needs met. So it became more and more apparent for me, okay, so the challenging behaviour that was being exhibited by lots of the young people that I was working with, it was like, what's going on here? Why is this challenging behaviour happening? And what I began to understand was all that the young people were trying to communicate was, please meet my needs. That kind of like the need for attention, the need for respect, the need for appreciation, all these things. And when somebody's not doing very well, and they're not getting their needs met because they're brilliantly academically and they fit into the mainstream model of education, then what happens is that they have to find alternative ways of getting those needs met. Let me just get a sip of water. But you see, I had this experience for myself that I didn't have those needs met for myself. And I was kind of like coping, and I was finding my way through life. So if I could do it, if it were, if I could still function okay, I'd gone down into this really dark place, but I'd come back up again. What was it that made the difference between people like me and people that perhaps never seemed to be able to get out of that place? And what I found was that there was this kind of like, as well as the birth of my son, there was this other key factor that changed things for me, and that was a counsellor. And the way that he was with me meant that all of a sudden I had a massive amount of those needs met.